Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam amma ba'd. Islam has ordained for us to be kind to and gentle towards our daughters. And in general, Islam has commanded us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam have commanded us to be kind towards women in general, regardless of whether this includes all women, of course, our spouses, our mothers, our sisters, and our daughters. And specifically regarding the daughters, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever has 3 daughters and was patient with them, fed them and gave them drink and clothed them from his wealth, then they will be a screen for him from the hellfire in the day of judgment. And Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala mentions in a chapter titled in his book Al-Adab al-Mufrad, the chapter was called the chapter whoever is responsible for supplying sustenance for 2 daughters or even 1. So that shows us how the Salaf were, the pious predecessors, how they regarded the importance of dealing and loving and having affection and caring for one's daughters. And in the narration of Imam Ahmed, that was collected in Musnad Imam Ahmed, he said, the Prophet ﷺ said, no one has 3 daughters or 3 sisters or 2 daughters or 2 sisters, and he fears Allah regarding them and is good to them, except that he will enter paradise. And from Ibn Abbas, from the Prophet ﷺ, who said, there is no Muslim who has 2 daughters, and he has good companionship with them, except that they will cause him to enter paradise. So all of these various narrations of the Prophet ﷺ emphasize for us the importance of being kind towards our daughters, for those who are blessed to have daughters. And part of the emphasis upon daughters is due to the fact that in the pre-Islamic time, the pagan Arabs used to have the practice of burying their daughters alive, because they didn't want daughters and the responsibility of daughters, and they preferred males, and daughters were almost an embarrassment for them. So they used to bury their very daughters alive. Wa'iyadhan billah. And for us now, this is a very difficult concept to imagine. The one that you have brought into the world and you've grown to love, especially if you had time to be with them, and to imagine burying them alive, that is inconceivable. However, this was one of the pre-Islamic practices that the Arabs had, and it was an evil and sick custom, and Islam came to eradicate that. And so we learn from the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, we see that Islam is on the opposite end of the spectrum compared to that evil practice, which you still find in many countries due to poverty. In many places, like in India, and China has this practice in many places in China as well, in which they believe in aborting and in fact killing their daughters. And so Islam is completely free from that practice, and in fact emphasizes the kindness, because we take our sharia, we take our law from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his commands, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever has 3 daughters and was patient with them, fed them and gave them drink and clothed them from his wealth, then they will be a screen for him from the hellfire in the day of judgment. And in fact, your children in general, being kind, regardless of whether it's 1 or 2. But the Prophet ﷺ emphasized 3, and in another narration 2, because of the perceived burden for many of the people, that they perceive this as a burden when they have more children, and especially more daughters, because the daughters in general, especially in traditional societies, were not going out to work, and so they were more considered a liability, because if you had sons would take care of you, and sons would go out and work, and so forth. And so Islam actualizes and realizes the nature of human beings, and actualizes the esteem of the woman and the esteem of the daughters and the preciousness of having daughters. And I ask Allah the Almighty to accept our good and protect our daughters and protect all of our children, and bless the Muslimin fi kulli makan, and bless us with ease in our various struggles around the world. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the Muslims in Palestine, and the Muslims in Egypt, and the Muslims in Yemen, and the Muslims in Somalia, and the Muslims in Sudan, and the Muslims and everywhere in their various struggles and their turmoils, and in Libya and in Syria and so forth, and grant them mercy, and bless us to return to our religion, so that way we can overcome these various obstacles that we find in our daily lives, and these hardships and trials. And anything that I said that was correct was from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anything that I said that was incorrect was from myself and the shaitan. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad.